Hi, everybody. This is Tanya Friedman, Chief Operating Officer of Kinetics.
And Carl Schusterman.
And Carl Schusterman. On our regular 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon Facebook Live session coming to you from beautiful sunny California. Thank you for the wonderful response. We've had an amazing response from everybody. So thank you so much for joining in and watching and all the comments and questions that we've been getting. We're so happy to see that it is making a difference and that we are sharing information that is useful and helpful for everybody. For those of you who haven't seen our Facebook Live sessions, I'm going to just do a quick introduction, both for myself as well as for Carl. So, as I said, my name is Tanya Friedman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Kinetics. We are a recruitment company. We specialize in bringing international nurses into the US. We recruit from many countries. Hi, Margot. Thank you for joining us. We recruit from many countries from all over the world. And we are what I always like to say, career matchmakers, which means that we don't just recruit for one facility. We represent hospitals, long-term care, acute care, correctionals, surgery centers, all different kinds of organizations all over the US. I've been in recruitment for many years. And I've been doing nurse recruitment also for many years. So it really is a passion of mine to be able to share this information because there's a lot of misinformation outside of the US about green cards and how that works for nurses. And we want to make sure that everybody gets all the right info. A lot about Carl. So Carl's bio is he has over 40 years of experience practicing immigration law. He served as a trial attorney for the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service, the INS, from 1976 until 1982 when he entered the private practice. He's one of the very limited number of attorneys who have been designated as certified specialists in immigration and naturalization law by California State Bar. For more than 10 years, he's been voted as one of the best lawyers in America. Well done, Carl. Super lawyer by his colleagues in the bar. Carl was featured in the February 2018 issue of Super Lawyers magazine. Carl has been named as one of the top 15 corporate immigration attorneys in the U.S. by Human Resources Executive magazine. The list goes on. His hard work and dedication to immigration law has earned him the highest rating in legal abilities and ethics from the prestigious Martindale-Hubbell Legal Directory. He's also served as a member of the Immigration and Nationality. Thank you. Law Advisory Commission for the State Bar. He's listed on the International Who's Who of Corporate Immigration Lawyers and the Chamber U.S. Guide for Leading Business Lawyers. He is the real deal, everybody. He knows his stuff, so we're very excited to continue. So last week we spoke about the consulate process, but we got a lot of questions, so we didn't actually even get through the consulate process for green cards. And today we're going to continue where we left off. Before we get to that, though, I just wanted to make sure that we talk a little bit about the visa bulletin, because we had some good news in the last few days about the visa bulletin. So, Carl, if you want to share about that.
So let me tell you what the visa bulletin is for those of you who haven't heard about it. The visa bulletin is put out on a monthly basis by the State Department, and people who are immigrating to the U.S. either through family members, through employment, or through the visa lottery, there's certain quotas for each category, certain quotas for each country that you were born in. So we link to the visa bulletin. We always put it up the day that the State Department puts it out, and it is certainly the most popular page on our website out of about 1,000 pages. You know.
Always the most exciting day when the visa bulletin comes out.
Exactly. And we just put up something with likes, and I notice it has 5 times as many likes on our visa bulletin page as any other page. So,
okay, good news.
And so what the visa bulletin does in this case is nurses are traditionally in the employment-based categories. We call them the EB categories. and it's the third category for professionals. So the EB3 category for Filipinos. As we pointed out, I think on the last video that we did, for Filipinos, the waiting times a couple of years ago were up to 6 to 8 years.
Forever.
And last week when we did our video, it had come down to like, I think it was about 20 months, so less than 2 years.
But good news now.
Yeah, I thought things would just kind of keep going up a little bit, but we had really good news. It came down 6 months, all in 1 month. So now the waiting time for a Filipino nurse to come to the U.S. is only 14 months. It hasn't been like that in years.
Wow.
So I have no idea, because we're handling so many healthcare providers and nurse cases, and as the number keeps going up, the waiting time could go up. So this, right now in July of 2018, is an ideal time to start immigrating to the U.S. If you have a job offer, or you can come to Tanya if you need a job offer. We're glad to do the paperwork for your case, but I haven't seen a better time in many years to immigrate to the U.S.
Okay, so let's go back for those. I know we spoke about it on the last session, but I think that we might have a lot of new people joining us. So I just want to go back for a minute on the visa bulletin, because you spoke about Philippines, but I think it's also worthwhile just for everybody to talk about the other countries as well.
Sure. So if you're a nurse from any other country, with 2 exceptions, India or China, if you were not born in India or China, there is no wait. There's a C, doesn't stand.
Current.
Yeah, not for Carl, current. And that means there's no backlog. So as fast as that you can get the government to process the papers, that's how fast you can get a green card. Should not be more than, I would say about 12 to 18 months in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any other country other than Philippines, India, and China, 12 to 18 months.
Right.
Philippines.
Philippines. It's not going to be too much longer, because fortunately, while you're waiting for your priority date, you're standing in a line going to a movie, and while you're waiting to get to the front, you can do all the other things. You can put all your forms together and get everything arranged, as long as you're working with somebody who's done this many, many times. So, we've done it so many thousands of times that I don't think it's going to be much longer for a Filipino nurse. Maybe 18 to 20 months to get a green card.
Okay, all right. So that's very exciting news for the Philippines. And we work with nurses from the Philippines every day. And I know right now in the Philippines, there are many, many nurses who are practicing, taking their NCLEX, taking their IELTS, getting their visa screens. So if you are in that situation, please contact us and let us know where you are in your process and how we can help you. As Carl says, there's no better time.
Right,
and hasn't been for many years.
Yeah, and we're offering something. You'll look at our scheduled consultation page with me, and it would be a few $100s to set up a consultation. But there's so many nurses that need our help that we're setting up free consultations with Elsa Garcia, who's she's the senior paralegal. And if there's some kind of complicated legal issue, she'll come to me. But if not, you can sign up and do a free consultation with Elsa.
Okay. All right. So that's covered the rest of the world, which is current. The Philippines. Talk a little bit about India and China.
Well, yeah, sad. Very sad. Because...
Well, there was a little bit of good news for India.
Oh, yeah. It moved forward,
yes,
but, it's still depressing.
Yeah.
So each country can only get 7% of each category. But India sends over so many people, like 30,000, 40,000 people a year on what's called an H-1B. It's a temporary visa for professionals. And they have no quotas on that. There's no per country quota. And then these people who come over if they're sponsored by their employer for a green card, then they're limited to 7% just because they're born in a place that has a lot of immigration to the U.S. So for India, on paper, it looks like it could be 10 to 15 years. In reality, it could be 20 to 30 years to get a green card.
But it could be less because there are It is improving. There is some progress.
Let's
give a bit of hope, Carl.
Okay. If you're from India, and my daughter-in-law's Indian, and she married somebody, my son, who's not from India, so if you're not afraid to get your parents a little bit upset, if you marry somebody from another country that's not backlog, Sri Lanka or Nepal or wherever.
South Africa,
there you go. You can use, it's called cross-chargeability, and you can use your spouse's country of birth to get you a green card. So we just got a call. There was a young woman who, she told me she had asked about 20 immigration lawyers about this. I'm not sure who she called because I would think...
Well, she clearly didn't go to the best one,
Well,
right?
yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of... I'm not trying to knock immigration attorneys.
No, there's some very good immigration
Plenty
lawyers.
of us know these rules, but there's also plenty of people who maybe are new or they haven't done cases like this. They all told her that she is from Honduras. Her husband is from India. He was getting a green card, and they'd said, well, you'll have to wait about 20 years. And I said, no, we can get you the green card immediately.
Oh, wow.
And she went to the embassy in her country last week. She came back with the green card.
Very interesting.
And she just called. She said, I love you. And I said, I won't tell my wife, but thank you. I'm so glad to be able to help you out. So
that's a great success story.
Yeah, that's great. I'll have to write that up in the future.
Yeah. Well, they're very interesting. So that's the visa bulletin. So I think we need to talk a little bit about recapture cases, because on last week's session we spoke about the consulate process and we got basically up to the I-140 process. But since then, in the last few days, I've been getting calls, emails, queries from so many nurses who are what we call recapture nurses. So I think it's important, before we carry on to the next stage of the consulate processing, the NVC, if we spend just a little bit of time talking about the recapture cases.
Yeah, so let's say you've been petitioned by an employer years ago or months ago, whenever it was, and that petition is pending, or there was a memo. We talked about this memo. It's from January 2017, and it says that if it's been pending for the petition for over 180 days, and the employer now decides to revoke the petition, you still keep your place in line. They can't move you to the back of the line again. So what we do, and again, we've done this hundreds of times, is you find a new employer, the employer sponsors you, and right in the petition that we filed to start your case, we show the old approval, the notice of approval, and we said, not only approve it, but give them the priority date from whenever it was, 2013, 2015. And since the Philippines date is only 14 months backed up right now, you might have a current priority date. So you could file for a green card at the very same time. Yeah.
It's actually quite interesting, because we had... this week we had a case with one of our clients. Was a candidate she was a Filipino-born nurse. She had a previous I-140, so she would have been a recapture nurse.
Okay.
But what happened is that the company that did her petition went out of business. They closed.
Okay.
At the time of the 2008 retrogression, and the recession was right after that. So she couldn't get a hold of that I-140. Of that original I-140, and because the Philippines moved so much in the last, in the last week, we were just looking at her case and saying, well, we can still try to get that I-140, but she can basically just file a new case at this stage.
She could, but as far as finding paperwork that you may not, have copies of, there's something called the Freedom of Information Act. We call it FOIA, right? And we can ask immigration to give us any document that's in the file. So we probably use it 3 or 4 times a day, hundreds of times a year, and it's really changed people's lives. And there's not even a filing fee. Immigration doesn't even charge a filing fee. So it's a great way to take advantage of these past things that might benefit you.
Okay. So that's really important for everybody to know. If you do have a previous petition, but you didn't actually have a copy of your I-140, that you can file for a FOIA. And what we would suggest is that you try and go back. I mean, I know for a lot of people it's many years ago, but go through every single email, any documentation that you have, because we actually had a nurse a few weeks ago. She put in a FOIA, and she didn't get any response. They couldn't file any documentation. She then moved houses and found one additional piece of documentation. It didn't actually have the I-140 on it, but it had some information about the date it was filed, who the petitioner was, who the lawyer was. She then filed a second FOIA, and she got it. And she got it.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen that too. Because,
Yeah.
you have to understand the Immigration Service, which is my old employer, so I've seen it from the inside. They are a huge bureaucracy. And sometimes if you don't have an alien number, you don't have the receipt number, sometimes they have trouble finding your papers. But if you can find anything that would tip them off to where that paper might be, you have a better chance of getting that through FOIA.
So sometimes just look for any document, any email, any piece of paper that can give you some information to be able to help them find it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Another issue that's raised with recapture cases is the children. So I know that you have a tremendous amount of experience in this area, but if you can give us a quick sum up.
Okay.
So let me just post the question. So if you were a recapture case, and you had a son or daughter who at that time was under the age of 21, so maybe they were 13, 14 years old, and you are now at the stage where you are going to be recapturing it, but your child has aged out, they're over 21. How does that work?
So there is something, it's a little bit complex. We have a lot of materials on our website about it and some videos about it. It's called the Child Status Protection Act. Usually if a child turns 21, even if they're single, they can't immigrate together with their parents. But since some of the lines, for like we said, from India and so on, are very, very long, Congress thought, well, gosh, we're splitting up families. There should be a way, even if the kid turns 21, in many cases, for the family to bring the kid with them. So it's sort of an arbitrary way, unfortunately, the way they interpreted it, but it still helps a good fraction of the people. The amount of time that the petition, in this case it would be called an I-140, an employment petition, is pending, will subtract from the child's age when they reach the front of the line. So let's say that this was pending for 2 years and the child is now 22 years old, so usually can't come with the parents. Well, those 2 years get subtracted from the age of 22. So now the child's 20 years old.
Okay.
So their CISPA age, not their biological age, but their CISPA age is less than 21, and they can
so they
immigrate.
can be included.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a mathematical equation,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And it's obviously got to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely. Yes.
So if you do have this situation, I would suggest that you speak to, if you're working with Kinetics, your recruiter and also your immigration lawyer to help you with the situation, because it is really on a case-by-case basis, because you've got to look at the date the case was filed, what age the child was at that time, and then where we are now today, and evaluate if it's going to be able to be to work or not. Okay. All right, so that's really the information I think that we wanted to just clarify on the recapture. So let's go back to the consulate processing.
Yes.
So last week we got up to the I-140, and I think we discussed a number of things. We spoke about the premium processing, we spoke about RFEs, we spoke about the NOID, we spoke about the 87 days. So we had a lot of information, and we had a lot of people that were very grateful for that. But let's assume now that the case has gone through the I-140 and it is now been approved. Yay, everybody's very excited, we're happy, we've got an approval. I see Gio's watching. I know Gio. Hi, Gio, one of the nurses we brought through.
Great.
And so the I-140 has been approved, and now the case goes to the NVC. I know at the NVC, and again here it can be very confusing. There's a lot of terms that people talk about. There's the fee bill, there's the civil documents, there's the DS-260. There's a lot of terminology.
Right.
If you want to take us through that stage and what's involved at the NVC.
Okay.
What is the NVC?
Okay.
And
We'll
what's
talk.
involved?
So I mean, again, back in the old days when I started, we'd get an I-140 approved, and then it would go to the U.S. Embassy or consulate in your country and so on. So imagine these consulates are hotels, and you're making a reservation. The NVC is the National Visa Center, and it helps all the embassies. It's a State Department agency. It helps all the embassies get the paperwork together and set up interviews. So it's kind of like you're making your reservation for the, to go to Manila or to go to, whatever consulate is in your country.
Getting your place in line.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And make sure that when you show up for the interview, that the NVC has forwarded the embassy all your documents.
Okay.
So the NVC is located in New Hampshire, in the New England states, and when we get an I-140 approved, typically, I wish it were a little faster, but typically in about 90 days, they get back to us, and they have a whole sheet of, here are 14 different documents that we need you to get, the birth certificates of your children and your marriage certificate and your police clearance and filing fees, all the rest of it. Okay. As long as you're working with somebody who's experienced, they have gotten so many of these identical letters from the NVC that they can just give you one of the letters they've already had, so that during that 90 days, you can get everything. That's what we do with our cases. And then as soon as the letter comes in, the next day we send everything to the NVC, which shortens up the process.
Okay. So it's really important to almost ahead of the game start collating those documents.
Right. Unless you're not in a rush and you don't care how long it takes to get a green card, but 90% of my clients do care. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a good idea to get that beforehand.
Yes.
Do you want to just go back on the DS-260? What is the
so the DS-260 is DS stands for Department of State. Remember, all the embassies and consulates abroad are part of the State Department, not part of the Immigration Service. So you filed your I-140 with the Immigration Service. Then when it's approved, they transfer it to the NVC, which is part of the reservation system for the State Department. Okay. And eventually you'll have your interview abroad at a U.S. consulate or embassy, which are also parts of the State Department. So they're the ones who make sure, they're like charging your credit card and making sure, you get the room you want. Like, I would like it on a high floor, but far from the elevator, that kind of stuff.
All right.
So, they want to make sure you don't have a criminal record and that you're really married to your spouse. And
you are who you say you are.
Yes, and your kids are really your kids and not your sister's kids who you're trying to bring with you. So they give you a whole list of all the paperwork that you have to submit. And when you have it all together with that paperwork and with your application for an immigrant visa, which is a green card, they will ship that over to the U.S. Embassy in the country, and they will then call you in for an interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is when it starts to get exciting.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of, I think, was the DS-260, didn't it used to be called the DS-230? I think
they've changed. Yeah, don't get me into that because they've changed names several times.
Oh, okay. It's just quite cute because we have one of our recruiters on our team.
Yes.
That whenever we have our internal meetings, she always talks about the DS-230.
Oh, okay.
And we're like, it's the DS-260 now, so it just shows you how long all of us have been doing this, 10 plus years. I think people get confused on is the DS-260 part of the NVC stage? So you're saying
yes,
it is?
Yes, it is.
All right. So once that stage is complete and we go to the consulate, before the consulate, the medicals and the police clearances. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when they set you up for the interview at, let's say the U.S. Embassy, I've been out there with my wife on Rojas Boulevard in Manila. They will also say, maybe 3 days before your appointment, you have to see Dr. Realness for your medical checkup, and they will make sure that you're medically stable, you're not a drug user, a whole bunch
physically
fit, and so on. And they'll give you a sealed letter to bring into the embassy for your interview, and then the consular officer will open it up, make sure your medical looks fine, and you will need that to be able to get your green card. Okay.
What other advice for anybody who's going to the consulate?
Well, I won't say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot of things. I had a client a few years ago who was talking to the doctor, not at the embassy, talking to the doctor, and he starts talking about some drug use that he had on an illegal drug.
Wow.
He was not my client at the time. It was after they told him he wasn't going to get a visa to come to the United States. But we were able, in his case, to actually find a case that said since he wasn't talking under oath to the Immigration Service, they couldn't deny it, and he came and was able to join his parents in the U.S. So,
but he was probably not a nurse, because
no, he was
a
not
nurse
a
was
nurse.
going to have to come here and have a medical too, and
right.
So
right. He was from the Philippines. He was not a nurse. He was But you should be very carefully prepared for that interview. I can tell you, because I had to take a client in, this was 1986, so 32 years ago. One of the lawyers in LA, I posted something that I was going out to Manila, so he had me try to get a second interview for somebody who had already been denied a visa, and maybe it was just bad luck, but the interviewer we got was such a tough guy.
Really?
I thought, you do not want to walk, you don't know which interviewer you're going to get. You don't want to walk into that embassy and just start running at the mouth, So here's my 3 basic rules. Okay. I mean, obviously...
We're all listening, we're all ears.
Yeah, because the preparation interview takes a half hour, and we only have a few more minutes.
So just on that, if you are going to the consulate, please make sure that, for our company, we are always very, very careful that everybody needs to have a preparation for the consulate interview, and make sure that you have spoken to your lawyer and you know what information you need to take with you. In most cases, you're going to need the letter from the employer as well. So there's a list of documents that you got to make sure that you take with the originals. There's a list of things. But okay, over to you, Carl. What are the 3 most important things we need to know?
Here's what I think. One, some of it may sound obvious, but number 1, tell the truth. Don't try to make things sound better than it is. If you're going to be OBGYN nurse or something, don't tell them you're going to be a nurse practitioner. It just makes sense, but some people like to exaggerate.
Well, and sometimes also people get nervous.
Oh, everybody's nervous. Yeah. Number 2, don't volunteer information. So when they ask you a question, keep your answer short, 1 or 2 sentences. If you start blabbing on, and you can see I'm a big talker, so but if I were in front of an interview at an embassy,
just answer the question.
Just answer it, 1 sentence, 2 at the most, and if they want to follow up, they'll follow up. They only have a certain amount of time each day, and if you say something that makes them scratch their head and say, we better look into that, then you may have problems, and it may at least delay you getting the visa.
All right.
And then number 3 is they sometimes will look for some contradiction, not as much in a nurse case as in a marriage case or something. So you have to be really careful that what you tell them is accurate. If they say, well, what date did you pass the NCLEX exam? And, you know, I mean, if they ask me what day did I pass the bar exam, it was 1973, I can't remember the date.
Yes.
And some people feel that pressure on them that they have to answer the date. And we've had several cases where people have come in, they put pressure on them, they say a wrong date or a wrong something or other, and then they deny their case, and then we have to spend a year reopening it to get them a visa. So just don't guess. You tell the truth, don't volunteer, don't guess.
Okay, and just answer the question in a simple, straightforward way.
Right.
Okay,
So
because at the end of the day, they're just trying to see, are you a real nurse?
Right.
Is this a real job? Because, you know, as we know, the American Nurse Association has said that the U.S. is going to need 1 million nurses by 2022. Nurses are the only occupation that are Schedule A, which are...
And physical therapists.
Yes. Okay, but we're talking to nurses. So you know, it is a really important profession to come into the U.S. You know, there is a growing nurse shortage in the U.S. So at the end of the day, I think the officers are really just trying to make sure that, you know, what you are, who you are, and what you're all about is true, and you are going to be fulfilling a purpose that is needed in the U.S.
You know, they're just doing their job, right? And, you know, if you've done everything the right way, I know you're going to be nervous, but there's nothing for you to fear. You just tell the truth, you don't volunteer, and you don't guess. If they ask you something, you're not on Jeopardy or some TV quiz show, you just say, I really don't know. I don't remember what the date was. I'm sorry, sir.
Always be honest.
Yes.
Rule of thumb.
And I think we're sort of at the end of our half hour.
I know,
It goes fast, doesn't it?
I can't believe we thought we would still talk about adjustment of status cases.
We'll do that next week.
We'll have to do that next week. I haven't been able to actually comment to some of the viewers, but Lisa, good to see you here again as well. And I did see a note from Christopher. If you'd said that you had emailed me and emailed Carl, please just be patient with us. We are getting at the moment literally thousands of emails and applications, and there's lots of interest and activity. So thank you for your interest. We really appreciate it. We want to help you. We want to be there for you. But just be patient with us because we are a little overwhelmed and swamped at the moment. So for next week, we're going to talk about adjustment of status.
Yes.
Thank you, Carl, for your time.
Thank you, Tanya.
It was a pleasure speaking to you.
And I want to tell people that in the last couple of sessions we've done, the same day, you know, give me a couple hours, but the same day, I will try to, if you have questions in the comments that you've put up on our Facebook Live, I will try to get back to you and just give you a short answer to the question and maybe a link to somewhere on our site where you can get more reading material.
Okay, so keep the questions coming. We love getting all of your questions. We're glad that this has been helpful for you. And next week, the discussions will continue.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.